Yo, what's going on? Mike from Mike Talk Sports. Day one of the NFL draft is complete, and in a draft where we saw 4 receivers get picked in a row, let me tell you guys why Quentin Johnston is the best receiver option for your Dynasty drafts this season. So first and foremost, you can make a good argument that Quentin Johnston is actually the best receiver in this NFL draft class. Of course, he was picked as the second receiver off the board with the 21st pick to the Chargers. He's a 6'3" receiver out of TCU. He's a guy who had a tremendous amount of production. In fact, you can argue he had the most impressive production stats of any receiver in this draft this year. He is a 3-time leader in yards for TCU. And when you dial up the tape, no offense to Max Duggan in this TCU offense, but it does seem as though that they could have gotten the ball to Quentin Johnston even more than they already did, which is very impressive and is saying a lot. And it really is that route running that really jumps off to you in that release package. He does such a good job of getting open looks, not only in the short to intermediate game, but he's really a deep threat. And that's something that gets you so excited with Justin Herbert and this Chargers offense. For the past year, everyone has been saying the Chargers offensive coordinator has a Mustang. He has a Ferrari, but he's driving it like a Toyota. And one of the main reasons this is because you have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the outside. And I really like those guys, but they're more bigger body possession receivers. And as Quentin Johnston is a bigger bodied receiver, and it's very obvious at this point, that's the mold of receiver that the Chargers really like going to. You could tell they have a plan for Quentin Johnston. They're going to move Keenan Allen to the slot almost full time now, and they are going to line Quentin up on the outside to have those vertical passing concepts and be a guy who can really help the offense on third and short as well. Because in my opinion, I just touched upon his route running and how he really can run routes at all 3 levels of the field. But to me, the number one trait that stands out to you when you watch Quentin play is that run after the catch ability. He really reminds me of a young Demaryius Thomas, slightly more technical and slightly more skilled with slightly less top end speed than a prime Demaryius Thomas. So obviously you saw what Demaryius Thomas was able to do with Tim Tebow, and then you were able to see what he did with a older Peyton Manning. That's something similar to what I envision Quentin Johnston doing for the next 10 years with Justin Herbert, and that really is one of the main points of the video. Not only can you argue Quentin Johnston is the best receiver in this draft class, but to me it's negligible comparing him to all of the other guys. So if the difference between Quentin Johnston and all the other guys is about negligible, then naturally you are going to take the guy who's in the best situation. And make no mistake about it, the Chargers have the best situation for a rookie receiver. They obviously have Justin Herbert, a guy who's going to be the staple of that franchise for the next 15 years. You have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, who are aging receivers who provide a different skill set than Quentin Johnston does. So it's not even like they have repetitive skill sets. So even if Mike Williams or Keenan Allen play the next 5 to 6 years, you're still going to have Johnston be a staple of that offense because of that unique skill set he does bring. Now let's compare him to the other receivers drafted right next to him. Starting off with the first receiver taken off on the board at the 20th pick in the NFL draft this year, it's going to be Jaxon Smith Njigba, and I do really like Jaxon Smith Njigba, but he did go to the Seattle Seahawks, and we see with the Seattle Seahawks, the viability with the fantasy receivers, it's very week-to-week base, and they really don't like having a specific game plan where you have DK Metcalf have 10 targets every single week, no matter what the matchup is. That's not really true of the Seahawks. You see Tyler Lockett has really struggled to have consistency in his fantasy seasons because of this exact reason. So the offensive play style definitely is not going to necessarily help out Jaxon Smith Njigba's case to be the number 1 dynasty receiver taken off the boards. Also, of course, you have a very young stud in a receiver in DK Metcalf, who really is always going to be the number 1 over Jaxon Smith Njigba, really no matter what, which is very disencouraging for Jaxon Smith Njigba fantasy owners. Then you have Tyler Lockett, a guy who does offer a very similar skill set. Now, I do think Smith Njigba is a Tyler Lockett replacement very soon in the near future. But the thing is, by the time he replaces Tyler Lockett, most likely the Seahawks are going to have a different quarterback, and that's really something that makes you very nervous about drafting a receiver in Dynasty. You want that quarterback stability, and while I really like Geno Smith, I'm not too sure about the long-term viability of that quarterback room. So in my opinion, you want something a little safer out of the first receiver taken off the board. Going with the 23rd pick now in the NFL draft to the Ravens is going to be Zay Flowers, a guy I also really like out of Boston College. To me, he's a slightly worse version of Hollywood Brown, which you can really question the process of trading Hollywood Brown the next year, drafting a slightly worse version of him. In my opinion, it's pretty stupid, but nonetheless, I do like Zay Flowers. But let's just address the elephant in the room, and realistically, Lamar Jackson has been an incredible quarterback, an incredible fantasy quarterback. But the thing is about Lamar Jackson, his receivers are yet to put together a good fantasy season, and it's just as simple as that. I don't know if I can bet on Zay Flowers to have a really good fantasy season next year and for his entire career when Marquise Hollywood Brown was not able to do so. I completely understand. Everyone makes the argument with the Ravens, well, they haven't had a good receiver in there with Lamar Jackson. This could be the case, and Zay Flowers can be the guy to potentially break that mold of Ravens receivers not having productive fantasy seasons, but in my opinion, that's something really tough to bet on. So in my opinion, Quentin Johnston is clearly a better dynasty option than Zay Flowers. Going to the last guy that got picked in the first round of the NFL draft, that's going to be the 24th pick, Jordan Addison to the Vikings, and again, he's never going to be the number one receiver on the Vikings. It is that simple. Of course, you have Justin Jefferson, obviously one of the best, if not the best receivers in the NFL. Jordan Addison is not going to be that good. He's not going to be as good as Justin Jefferson. So he's always at most going to be the number two option in this system. Something else, the quarterback stability. Again, we don't know how Kirk Cousins is going to do for the latter part of his career, but more importantly, when he's gone, who's going to be the quarterback with the Minnesota Vikings? They really have not had a good track record at drafting quarterbacks, and it is very risky to bank on Jordan Addison's future when his quarterback room is so up in the air for the next couple of years. So all in all, in my opinion, Quentin Johnston is the slam dunk, home run, clear-cut number one receiver for a dynasty draft. Thanks for listening, guys. Do you agree or disagree with my Quentin Johnston take? Let me know in the comment section below.